Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of If You Could Hide to Co-Log podcast. My name is Clive, and joining me once again is my wife, Kerry. Welcome, Kerry.
Hello.
Okay, so today there's so much to go through. So I'm hoping that as I try and get through these stories, Kerry's going to sort of hold me back and make sure that I clear everything up and get everything out there, because I tend to just trail off with these stories. So what do you reckon?
Yes, I do think you do. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, hello. Asking if you're going to be helpful. All right, so I'll get us into the quote, and then we'll get straight into it. Okay, so this is at the time Elder Oaks, but now obviously President Oaks. This is from 1992 conference called Bible Studies and Personal Protection. He says, "At times, all of us must stand against those who mock and revile. Some of us sometimes will face some earthly power as mighty as Goliath. When that happens, we should emulate the courage of David, who was mighty because he had faith and he went forth in a righteous course in the name of the Lord of hosts." So obviously today we're going to be talking a lot about David and Goliath. Goliath is such a small story of the David and Goliath story, but it's such an impactful one. So let's get into it. We're in 1 Samuel now, chapter 17. We'll do chapter 17, 18. Then we're going to skip over to 24, 26, and then skip then into 2 Samuel. So let's get into it today. So first of all, Israelites and the Philistines, they're still fighting. And at this point, one of the wars, they're on two sides of a mountain. So in the middle is a big gully. So the Philistines, they decide to send out their champion. Now, their champion is this giant named Goliath, whose height, it says that he is 6 cubits and a span, which roughly work out to be about 9 feet and 9 inches tall. And he's not just a skinny, tall man. Like, this guy is powerful.
I actually looked up how tall 9 foot 9 inches is, so that I could kind of put it into perspective, because as you know, I'm not very good with stuff like heights.
Yeah.
So,
Because you're quite small.
well, I am only 5'4", so like someone my height against someone that tall, that's crazy to me. But I looked it up, and it's about shoulder height of a large giraffe.
Wow.
Yeah, so like when you're thinking about when you go to the zoo, like giraffes are massive. It's the height of a standard shipping container. Shaquille O'Neal is 7 foot 1 inch, so he's another 2 foot 8 inches taller than Shaquille O'Neal. And when you see Shaq against other people, like, he is massive. And then the last height I had was he's pretty much the same as a regulation basketball hoop, because that's exactly 10 foot. So he's only just a little bit shorter than that. So it's really tall.
That is massive, yeah. The size of a giraffe, that's crazy.
Well, the shoulder.
Shoulder of a giraffe, yeah. My goodness. Okay, so he's the one that came out. And we've spoken about giants in the past, but so this seems to be more of a not a group of giants. This is just one giant. This is their champion. This is their guy that they've kept secret for this whole time. So for 40 days now, Goliath defies the armies of Israel, demanding that someone come out and fight him in combat. And so in verse 9, this is what it says. It says, "If he be able to fight with me and to kill me, then will we be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and serve us." So whoever can kill me, if you can kill me, will be your servants. If others are not, then you be our servants. Simple as that.
Well, you can just imagine all the men in the army for 40 days. Goliath's like, come on, who's going to fight me? And none of them have gone out and fought him. They're obviously scared.
Well, I guess they're not only scared going, I don't want to die, but also when I do die, because I guaranteed I will, then my family's going to be shamed forever because of me, they couldn't beat Goliath. We all have to be the servants of the Philistines now. The people that we've been battling for years and years and years. David, we've spoken about David last week. So David, he comes out and he's actually bringing provisions to his elder brothers who are in this fight. And he's astonished by the army's fear of Goliath. And it says this, do you want to read for us verse 37 of chapter 17, it's set 1 Samuel.
David said, moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, go, and the Lord be with thee.
Right. So David is more God-fearing than he is man-fearing. He isn't going, he's a giant. I'm as afraid as you. He's going, well, God's going to protect us. There is a story that we didn't get through last week of a couple of stories when David does kill lions, kills bears to protect the sheep. You know, he's a farmer and he's a herder. He's protecting these sheep. But he has been blessed by the Lord, and he knows that he's blessed by the Lord. And a lot of the times, you know, until we get into next week, but a lot of the times when David does things, he recognizes the Lord in everything that he does. So now Saul says to him, okay, if you want to fight this guy, you need to wear this armor. So what's really interesting here in 39, he talks about the armor. Do you want to read 39?
And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he aside to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him.
Right, so Saul's like, you need this armor. You can't just go out there bare. But he says, well, I can't go into battle because I haven't tested any of this armor. I don't even know if it's going to work for me. I can't really move properly, and it's not my armor. So I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to go out there. I'm going to take my staff. I'm going to take 5 smooth stones with me, and I'm going to take this sling. And this is what I'm going to go with because I trust the Lord. So let's talk about what he did then. So verse 45, do you want to read that?
And then Then said David to the Philistine, thou comest to me with a sword and with a spear and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied.
Right. Now, do you want to read 47?
And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth, not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you unto our hands.
Right. So this is David, again, not of himself saying, I'm awesome at a slingshot, but he's saying that everything that are going to happen from now on, remember that this is of the Lord. And so we know the story. David took his slingshot, slinged it up at Goliath, and Goliath dies. And he takes Goliath's sword and chops off Goliath's head with his sword. Now, Josephus says that Goliath's armor was so massive that when David struck his head with the stone, that he actually pierced through the helmet and went directly into his brain, which then killed Goliath instantly. So by the time Goliath had hit the ground, he was already dead. Solid.
Crazy.
Massive, yeah. It wasn't just a simple flick the stone and see what happens.
And with such courage as well. Because it said he just ran for him. Like he's walked up to him, this huge man, and said, the Lord's with me, and just runs for it and kills him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, obviously very, very important to the rest of the stories that are coming up because, I mean, it just shows the faith of David. You know, who amongst us would have that type of faith that, like you said, could run towards this giant just knowing that God's going to be with him. Yeah.
And being young, presumably like
teens,
15 to 20-ish.
Yeah. Early teens for sure, maybe mid-teens, but yeah, very, very young. But I guess, you know, when you're young, I feel like you're more, I mean, the world hasn't gone against you really, has it? So, you know, you rely on the Lord a lot more, you know, and you see like Joseph Smith's very young before he, the things happen to him. But anyway, not taking anything away from David, incredible man. So briefly, just talk about verse 18. So Jonathan, who we mentioned last week, he is Saul's brother. He believes in David essentially and loves everything that David's done. And so he strips himself of the royal robe and it takes his sword and he bows down, in his bow, and he bows down to David and gives it to him as a covenant and says that I want to be with you. I don't want to be with Saul. And so then it goes on, basically chapter 18 as the armies are returning home, and the women start singing this song. In verse 7 it says, and the women answered one another as they played and said, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. Because, I mean, the Philistines, they obviously ran away after Goliath had been killed. So this obviously angered Saul, because as we mentioned again last week, Saul, he has this anger problem, where he thinks if someone were to play, obviously there's a devil inside of me, someone needs to play this harp and it'll calm me down. But I don't see it as a devil being inside of him. I just see him as having these mental health issues and just being quick to anger and saying that, you play the harp and it goes away. But I just don't see it as a devil being inside of him. It just doesn't make any sense, or an evil spirit. I mean, it could be an evil spirit in the sense of, when he gets frustrated, it does anger him more. That's not to say that there's nothing against, but I still think it's more on him to understand what's happened to him in the past and know that he should be relying on God. He shouldn't have this jealousy inside of him. That's how I see Saul. So the next day, it says that an evil spirit comes upon Saul, but Saul attempts to pin David to the wall with a javelin twice while David is trying to play him this harp and trying to calm him down. So in verse 10 and 11, do you want to read that?
And it came to pass on the morrow that the evil spirit from God came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of the house, and David played with his hand as at other times, and there was a javelin in Saul's hand. And Saul cast the javelin, for he said, I will smite David even to the wall with it. And David avoided out of his presence twice.
Right. So Saul's got these issues. Obviously, where it says for an evil spirit from God, that's incorrect. Obviously, we know that God doesn't have evil spirits just ready to go. So now, fearing that David's growing popularity, that Saul is going to be shunned upon by everyone else. So Saul schemes to have, he comes up with this plan. All right, I have this daughter who you can marry, but in order for you to marry my daughter, I need you to bring me 100 Philistines' foreskins. So David goes out and he actually delivers 200 Philistines' foreskins, and then he's able to marry Saul's daughter. Pretty basic like that, but let's look about what happens after that. This is verse 28 and 29.
And Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. And Saul was yet the more afraid of David, and Saul became David's enemy continually.
So it shows there that Saul knew that it was of the Lord, but still he was angry with David because he just had this jealousy inside of him. All right, so now we're going to skip over. So there's a few things that happen in between. Basically, the things you need to remember between the chapters. So we're going to jump to chapter 24 because that's what Come Follow Me asks us to do. But between 18 and 24, it consists of David doing good and Saul getting more and more jealous of David. Essentially is what happens. There is other stuff that happens in between, but that's basically what's happening right now. So Saul's at a point of just extreme jealousy for David, and he wants to hunt him down. He wants to kill him because he just doesn't like the way things are going. So Saul takes 3,000 men to hunt David in the wilderness, and Saul enters this cave, and it says that he went in to cover his feet. I looked up what covering his feet means, and it basically just means he went to go to the toilet. So he goes to go to this toilet inside this cave, unaware that David and his men are hiding in the cave because he's hiding from Saul and Saul's men in this exact cave. Now, David's men really press him to kill Saul. Like, this is your opportunity, it says in verse 4. And the men of David said unto him, Behold, the day of which the Lord hath said unto thee, Behold, I will deliver thine enemy into thy hands. Thou mayest do to him as it seemed good unto thee. Then David arose and cut off the skirt of Saul's robe privately or privily. So basically, he sneakily cut off Saul's robe instead of killing him.
Yeah.
The Lord's delivering Saul into his hands, but David he's a good person. He doesn't want to kill Saul, even though he's got this opportunity. So he goes and he cuts off the skirt or the robe of Saul's robe, and he shows it to Saul and says, I could have killed you, but I didn't because I'm not that type of person. So he doesn't want Saul, obviously, to be that type of person around. So, I could have killed you. You haven't killed me yet. Let's just call it quits, essentially, is probably what he said.
Yeah.
So, but let's look at exactly what he says, because that's, not biblical. Let's read what he says. So, do you want to read verse 10 and 11? This is David saying this to Saul.
Behold, this day thine eyes have seen how the Lord had delivered thee today into mine hand in the cave, and some bade me kill thee, but mine eyes spared thee, and I said, I will not put forth mine hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. Moreover, my father, see the skirt of thy robe in my hand, for in that I cut off the skirt of thy robe and killed thee not. Know thou and see that there is neither evil nor transgression in mine hand, and I have not sinned against thee, yet thou huntest my soul to take it. Yeah.
Right. So I have it. I could have killed you. I didn't.
Everyone wanted me to kill you. I didn't kill you. Here's
Yeah.
the proof.
Because, he's saying there that Saul was the Lord's anointed because Saul isn't the prophet. He's the king. And don't forget, Samuel was told by the Lord to go and find Saul to be the king. So David's going, well, the Lord has anointed you as the king. I love the Lord and I'm not going to go after you. You're the Lord's anointed.
Yeah.
Even though Saul's still a bad guy.
Yes. Well, if the Lord wants Saul to die, then the Lord would make that happen, is what
Exactly.
he's assuming.
Which has happened many times through the scriptures.
Yeah.
All right, so this is then Saul's response to David. Do you want to read verse 17?
And he said to David, Thou art more righteous than I, for thou hast rewarded me good, whereas I have rewarded thee evil.
Right. So he's gone, well, you're a better person than me because I would have killed you and you haven't killed me, essentially. And there is a bit of other stuff that happens in between, but due to time restrictions and the amount of information we've got to get through today, I'm going to skip ahead. Is that all right with you? Do you have anything in between?
No.
Okay. So let's look at 1 Samuel verse 25. Sorry, chapter 25. So now Samuel dies. Right at the beginning, Samuel died. And all the Israelites were gathered together and laminated him and buried him in the house of Ramah. And David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. So basically, that he died. And we know that the Israelites, they mourn for a long time. So he goes and he dies. Now, David and his men, David's still he's been anointed by Saul to be a high priest and all that, but he is to be king. But sorry, by Samuel to be king. But he can't be king until Samuel dies. So right now, David is still a man that goes out and shears sheep and takes care of other people's flocks and things like that. So at this point in the story here, David and his men go out to protect a wealthy man's flock. This man is named Nabal, and he lives in Carmel. Would you say Carmel?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. That's how I'm saying it. Carmel. The American version of caramel.
Yeah.
That's how they say caramel. All right, so during sheep shearing season, David sends messengers to request a peaceful share of the provisions of this man named Nabal. Now, Nabal insults David and treats him like a runaway servant. So he's just basically just a really bad guy to David. And this obviously angers David. And so he has this idea now that he is going to kill all of Nabal's men. And so he prepares to go out and to slaughter all of Nabal's men. But there's this woman who is Nabal's wife named Abigail. And Abigail quickly intercepts David and his massive caravan, and she brings him food and provision and things. In verse 18, it says this. It says, actually, do you want to read it?
Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves and 2 bottles of wine and 5 sheep ready dressed and 5 measures of parched corn and 100 clusters of raisins and 200 cakes of figs and laid them on asses.
Right, and then 19.
And she said unto her servants, Go on before me, behold, I come after you. But she told not her husband Nabal.
So she knew the plan and she wanted to go and stop it. So she brings all the stuff out to David that he wanted and to all of his people. And she didn't tell her husband, and she's sort of like the peacekeeper. And she wanted everything to be as it was. So she counsels him. Basically, you're going to be the king. You don't want these murders on your conscience, is essentially how she puts it in my layman's terms anyway. Is that how you wrote it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so David then basically he changed his mind. Obviously, that's the way to go. And David praises her wisdom. And then she goes home and, it sort of ends at that point for the Nabal story. But then when she goes home and she tells Nabal everything that's happened, basically it's interesting. So let's have a look at that. So let's go read. Do you want to read 36 and 37?
And Abigail came to Nabal, and behold, he held a feast in his house, like the feast of a king. And Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunken. Wherefore she told him nothing, less or more, until the morning light. But it came to pass in the morning, when the wine was gone out of Nabal's, and his wife had told him these things, that his heart died within him, and he became as a stone.
Actually, do you want to read 38 as well?
And it came to pass about 10 days after that the Lord smote Nabal, that he died.
Right. So I don't know the science behind what happened to him, nor am I a doctor, so I can't explain that.
I mean, to me, it sounds like he had a stroke and was in a coma or something.
For 10 days, yeah.
Yeah.
And then he just didn't come out of it and he died.
Yeah.
And obviously that was the will of the Lord. And so that's when it says that the Lord smote Nabal.
Mm.
That's how I see it as well. There's been people in the Book of Mormon, same situation, or most of the time it was because an angel came and they were struck with, like stoned. There were other times, people were struck down and then died later. So
Yeah,
it's just something that happens. But that's essentially what happened to Nabal. And so now David takes Abigail, Nabal's wife, as his wife. And so now David is married to Abigail. All right?
Yep.
Anything you want to add?
Well, he takes another woman as well.
Okay.
So we've got 3 wives now.
So that's 43. And David also took...
Yeah, go on.
All right. Ahinoam. I don't want to insult his wife. Of Jezreel, and they were also both them his wives. So there you go. So now, David's got 2 wives.
3 wives.
3 wives. Oh yeah, because of Saul's daughter.
Yes.
Saul's daughter and Abigail, and then this other lady. Okay, so now we're gonna again skip ahead as Come Follow Me asks us to do, and we're gonna jump to 2 Samuel chapter 5. All right, now at this point here, Saul dies, or Saul is dead. And so because Saul is dead, we know that David is to be appointed king, right? So the tribes of Israel assemble at Hebron to anoint David as the king over the whole nation. And at this point now, it says that David was 30 years old when he began to reign. So we know that he's been quite young. We know that around the time that he slew Goliath, he was a teenager, and now he's 30 years old. So really for everything so far, he's been very, very young, and he's got 3 wives and he's still quite young. So it's really interesting that David's career, since we know that everyone so far has been really old when they've been called and really old when they die.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting point here, just to point out that David's quite young. So basically his first thing that he wants to do is he wants to march and take over the Jebusites. So the Jebusites have this really strong city or fort, or however you'd call it. And they are a really powerful nation. But David, they're not Israelites, they're not the people of God. David wants to take over, and he wants that to be the new capital. And so let's look at it now. So in verse 8 here, so I'll put a picture up actually of the city. The city's called Zion, where the Jebusites are. Not the city of Zion that we know of, but it's called Zion. And they want to take over. So I'll put a picture up so everyone can see what we're looking at here. But let's read verse 8 of what happens here. Do you want to read verse 8, chapter 5?
And David said on that day, whosoever getteth up to the gutter and smiteth the Jebusites, and the lame and the blind that are hated of David's soul, he shall be chief and captain. Wherefore they said, the blind and the lame shall not come into the house.
See, it's funny because they sort of mocked David, saying that, the blind and the lame, It's so fortified in here that we can put the blind and the lame on the outside. You still can't take it over. So you're saying, well, obviously we can, and that's the way it is. So he was saying there, interesting, that whoever goeth in the gutter and smiteth. So in the picture, you'll see that there's sort of like a pond, sort of rivery area down the bottom, and you go in there and up, and that's where their water source comes from, and that's where they're going through, and that's how they're going to attack. So instead of going in the front door, they're sort of coming from underneath, and that's how they're able to take over. So then in verse 11, this is what it says.
And Hiram, king of Tyre, sent messages to David, and cedar trees, and carpenters, and masons, and they built David an house.
So David's taken over now, and people recognize that he is the king.
Mm-hmm.
And so they send him things, they send him gifts, and they build him a house inside of this fortress. And then in verse 12,
And David perceived that the Lord had established him king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for his people Israel's sake.
and that's what's so good about David at the moment. Don't want to spoil anything for later, but David recognizes that everything that he's done so far is because of the Lord. At no point yet has he gone, this is because I'm so good. Just like everyone else seems to have done sometime, gone, this is because of me. Obviously not prophets of the Lord, but a lot of people that are like military leaders. And again, David isn't the prophet. David is the king. You know, the prophet's Nathan, which we'll get into it later maybe if we've got time. But so David's the king, and he's been appointed king, not only by the Lord, but also the people. And so, you know, he recognizes that everything is through the Lord.
And then he takes more wives and concubines.
And how many altogether?
Well, just because I was interested to know, I looked it up, and there's 8 named wives in total, and then there's unnamed and concubines.
Right.
And then over 20 sons, and then all the daughters.
Yeah, it's a weird thought because, you know, in today's society we go, oh, he might be a bit of a weirdo, but not long ago, you know, it was pretty normal to have a lot of wives.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how you want to take it. Do you see David as like, do you have less respect for him when he has more wives?
It was just interesting. I mean, I didn't really have any thoughts exactly on it. I just thought it was interesting. Keeps taking wives.
Yeah.
Here and there.
Which I guess is important when we talk about next week, when we talk about him getting yet another wife, and how it's really the downfall of him. Having too many wives is a downfall. So who'd have thought? All right, so let's look at chapter 6. So now David, he's in this city, and he calls the city of David. And he wants to bring the Ark of the Covenant, or the Ark of God, as it explains it in here. He wants to bring it to the new capital. And then, so they put it on a wagon, and they start bringing it over. And do you want to read verse 5 for us?
And David and all the house of Israel played before the Lord on all manner of instruments made of fir wood, even on harps, and on psalteries, and on timbrels, and on cornets, and on cymbals.
Right. So what's interesting here about this verse, right? We'll get into the next verse in a minute, but they've put the Ark of the Covenant on this wagon to take it to the city. And they're so excited by everything, by the whole situation. They think they're doing so good that they're singing, praising God.
And this huge party, huge fanfare, lots of noise. Yeah.
On the journey.
Yeah.
Right? Now, it takes quite a dark turn. Now, let's read. Do you want to read verse 6? Mm-hmm. Dramatic pause, then we'll read verse 7.
Okay. And when they came to Nashon's threshing floor, Uzzah put forth his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God smote him there for his error, and there he died by the ark of God.
Right. So this is a story that I'd always heard of, and I'd always been so defensive of Uzzah, going, if something were to fall, I mean, first of all, your immediate reaction would be to go and save it, especially if it was something so important, right? So that would be me. Something goes to, oh no, you know, remember that time one of our daughters, we were on a spinny thing, she fell off and I quickly grabbed her.
Yes.
Hero moment back.
So, merry-go-round, I think, is the name of it, by the way, not spinny thing. Okay. We don't just spin our children around.
So anyway, so, you know, you see something fall and you got to catch it. And that's essentially what he did. Now, yes, the Ark of the Covenant, we've been told, do not touch it or you will die. In fact, it's only the Levites that can really carry it through these poles he sticks through, and they're the only ones who can carry it. But still, at the same time, if it's falling and it's the Ark of God, you want to catch it, right? So that's what I always understood it as. Now, the real reason why he died is a bit more complicated than that. Now, I was looking through that New World Translation. This is a Jehovah's Witness Bible.
Ugh.
Now, when they're talking about the Ark of the Covenant and when it was put on, so verse 3 of chapter 6, it says, and they set the Ark of God upon a new cart. Okay? But in verse 3 of the New World Translation, it says, however, they had the Ark of the true God ride upon a new wagon. So immediately you go, well, however. So interesting, because that sort of gives you a bit of a caution of, well, is something wrong there? That's how I read it, however. Right? So if we skip over to Chronicles, which I don't want to spoil anything for later, but if we look at Chronicles chapter 15, I'm looking at you so you can find it.
Thanks.
Chronicles chapter 15, verse 15. Right? If you would go ahead and read that.
And the children of the Levites bear the ark of God upon their shoulders with the staves thereon, as Moses commanded according to the word of the Lord.
Right. So the children of the Levites are the ones that are supposed to carry. So if the Ark of the Covenant needs to go from one place to another, you don't throw it on the back of a cart like it's some other piece of luggage. It's meant to be carried by the sons of Levi. So the fact that the ox, what does it say, in verse, way back. So it says in verse 6, for the ox shook it. I think this was more of that cart was shook because not because, I mean, maybe they hit a pole, maybe they hit a bit of mud, I don't know. But I think it's more like it shook because it should never have been in the first place. It was about to fall off because it really shouldn't have been. It's just like luggage being thrown on that gets tossed around when you're moving. They didn't have smooth roads back then. And so I think it just shows that it really shouldn't be here. This isn't just a piece of luggage that gets thrown on. It can move, it can wobble. So when Uzzah went in to try and grab it, well, his death came because, well, they shouldn't have been in the carriage in the first place, and he didn't have the faith that the Lord would protect it. So it's more than just he stumbled and he caught it. So now, out of fear, David then takes it off, takes the Ark of the Covenant off, and puts it at Obed-Edom at his house for 3 months. And now it's interesting because it's so protected and it's so glorious, such a glorious thing. It is protected for so long that in verse, do you want to read verse 12 for us?
And it was told King David, saying, the Lord hath blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all that pertaineth unto him because of the ark of God. So David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom into the city of David with gladness.
Right. So he is happy to take it. Obviously, it's protected. Obviously, we still need to bring it back to the city of David. Now, what's interesting about this is because David was so fearful about everything that had happened so far, well, you read verse 13, and let's talk about it.
And it was so that when they that bare the ark of the Lord had gone 6 paces, he sacrificed oxen and fatlings.
Right. So every 6 paces, it wasn't the first 6 paces. It says that, well, it talks about in other places that basically every 6 paces that he went, he wanted to sacrifice to the Lord.
Paces is in
it's in like 6 steps.
Wow.
But it was 10 kilometers away that they still had to travel. So I don't think that he would have done it every 6 paces. But a lot of, when I was reading up a lot of, because, when I'm studying, I like to look at different views of different religions. And a lot of people says, yes, every 6 paces he sacrificed. But I just can't see that happening. Not that he didn't have enough faith, but that's a lot of sacrifice that he's got to do. It's a lot of journey. It'd take forever. So, I think it's more that, he went 6 paces, he sacrificed. Maybe he did it more often than that. I don't know. But anyway, so he still had to travel another 10 kilometers, but he did. He traveled the 10 kilometers and he got there. And then in verse 16, this is what he did when he got there. So, we talked about already that they were already super excited when it was on the cart and they were singing
Yeah.
and doing all this. So, do you want to read verse 16?
And as the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal, Saul's daughter, looked through a window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart.
Right. So he's obviously very excited about the situation. She's looked in through the window and, she doesn't really love what he's doing. So she doesn't love what David's doing. She doesn't see it as very dignified. And
She's looking out the window to him in his what is it, his apron,
yeah.
and she's like, ugh.
Well, read verse 22. This is what she says to David.
And I will yet.
Sorry, 20.
Then David returned to bless his household, and Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, how glorious was the king of Israel today, who uncovered himself today in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants, as one of the vain fellows shamelessly uncovered himself.
Right. So
Uncovereth.
shows doesn't mean how great was it. Shows it meant
Sarcastic.
how embarrassing was it.
Yeah. How embarrassing for all of us. For the king. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, David's response is great. I like his response. She's come to him and gone, didn't like that. Didn't like that. You're the king. You really shouldn't be dancing around like that. Now, David's response, do you want to read? Let's go. It's let's go verse 21 and 22.
Okay. And David said unto Michal, it was before the Lord which chose me before thy father and before all his house to appoint me ruler over the people of the Lord over Israel. Therefore will I play before the Lord, and I will yet be more vile than thus, and I will be base in mine own sight, and of the maidservants which thou hast spoken of them shall I be had in honor.
Right, and so I'm doing this because of the Lord. I'm dancing because of the Lord. I'm grateful because of the Lord, and I will continue to do it because of the Lord.
Yeah, and I'm not fussed what people think about me. He's not prideful, so why would he care if that's what he's honoring the Lord?
Do you reckon I could do that?
Being thankful, dancing out in the yard in your underwear.
I think it'd be okay.
I would probably be like, ugh. I'm probably just as bad as she was.
Well, let's talk about the consequence of her actions. Obviously, again, the Bible, it doesn't go into the detail of it. I'm sure it wasn't just her going, that was gross, or I didn't like that, or you shouldn't be doing that. I'm sure there's a lot more conversation because the consequence of her actions are now verse 23.
Therefore, Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child unto the day of her death.
Right. So the consequence of her actions, she didn't ever become a mother.
Well, I'm taking that to mean there was just the breakdown in their relationship from that point. That he can see her for the person that she's become. And perhaps she's changed a lot when she was not with him for those years that she was taken off to her other husband and then come back. And that, and he's doing everything for the Lord. They're two different people.
Right.
That's how I saw it.
Yeah. We don't know the exact situation, but yeah, that's the situation in the end. She never has children. All right, I don't want to go too briefly with the Davidic covenant, but in the interest of time, obviously chapter 7 is probably something you should really read verse by verse to yourself and really understand what the Lord's saying. But in the interest of time, I'll just skim over it. So David, basically, he lives in this house. He's been given this house that we've already talked about. He's been in the house. But he's saying, well, the ark is in a tent. I'm in a house, but the ark of God is in a tent. How is that okay? Now, that night, the Lord speaks to Nathan the prophet, because again, don't forget, David isn't the prophet, he's the king. Nathan speaks to Nathan the prophet, and he explains to him that David doesn't have to build a house for the Lord, doesn't have to build a house for the covenant. God will bless David. It's his descendants that are going to build this house. So verse 12 and 13 of chapter 7.
And when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. and he shall build an house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever.
Right. So someone's going to come along after you die.
Mm.
Sleeping with your fathers is eventually you're going to die like your fathers did. There's going to be someone that comes up that will build a house, and he will build a glorious house. And I will bless him to build this house. Spoiler alert: Solomon. Solomon's temple, masons, and all of them will come from that. So basically, yeah, that's what's going to happen. And again, it's a really good chapter. We'll end it, I think, on verse 16. Do you want to read verse 16? We'll end it there.
And thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever.
Right. So this is a similar covenant that the Lord has given to David as what he's given in the past to Moses, to Abraham, to Enoch. Maybe not Enoch. Oh, yes, I suppose. But anyway, all of these people that you will be, your seed will be on forever. The house will be established from you. Christ will come from this lineage, and he's saying that basically to David. So that's how the section ends here. So there's a lot to it. There's a lot to unpack, and if you want to read it slowly yourself, obviously at home you can. But yeah, there's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us once again for another episode of If You Could Hide a Color podcast. Catch us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, a million other places, Spotify, Apple Music, Prime, Amazon Music, anywhere else. Anyway, catch us there, and yeah, be sure to follow along, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.